I've spent over 4,500 hours playing F1 career modes over the last 10 years. And so these are the features and changes I want to see in F1 25 career mode and beyond. So of course, if you've been following along with the channel, I've just recently finished my latest career mode season on F1 24, preparing the next season as we speak. But as we come towards the end of January, slowly the thoughts of Formula 1 in 2025 start to ramp up. Of course, they already have this last week with Lewis Hamilton's first time in a Ferrari car. Very, very exciting. And of course, that means then the mind goes to the next F1 game, F1 25. But like I said, and beyond, because I only just clocked recently how many bloody hours I've put into playing the F1 games. And specifically, majority of those hours have been on career modes. And with that wealth of experience, having played these games firsthand, I know the ins and outs, the gripes, the improvements that we've been wishing over the years, basically. So this list of 10 different features and changes and stuff that I want to see in the future of Formula 1 games is kind of almost like a 10 of greatest hits, collating info from all the F1 games, not just the last one, because I think we're all very well aware of the annoyances of F1 24 and where improvements could be made. But I'm talking over the course of the years, what kind of big things that we've still banged on about that we want to see in future Formula 1 games. I'm going to kick things off with number one, enhanced AI behavior. Now, we've talked about this plenty, especially because F1 24's AI is abysmal. It feels like we've taken 6 years back in terms of development. Like, honestly, the AI back on like F1 2017-18, I think, were better AI than F1 24. First of all, I simply hope that in F1 25, we get back to AI that were at least as good as F1 23 when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing, not being in DRS trains, etc., etc. You've heard that stuff. But I'm talking in beyond, I think I want to see even more from the AI, especially I know it's a hot buzzword right now, AI developing in the real world. And although for many, including myself, AI becoming a bigger part of our lives is not really a great sounding thing, especially when it comes to the creative industry. AI taking over is just really not it at all. I think where it can be used importantly is in video games. We've already, seen the notion of having even more in-depth AI NPCs in open world games. Why not even more in-depth AI models in racing games to make them more challenging to race, more realistic, better decision making on the fly, computing where's the best place to go, as you would as a real person, to give you that extra challenge as a player versus the computer, and also adaptability in race conditions, going offline to find the grip when the rain starts falling, with like AI learning models so they can actually be trained kind of almost by themselves and continuously do these simulations. Because the problem is it takes a long time actually for these racing games. They have to train the AI constantly for different scenarios. But if there were more in-depth models there to be able to train them kind of on their own, basically, could that take a lot of work off the developers, allow them to actually put their time into other parts of the game and leave that to its own devices. Number two, and this is mainly in regards to obviously my team career mode, which we think will be making a bigger return in F1 25 since we had the revamp of driver career mode in F1 24. It seems the reason that now this next year we'll get the revamp of my team, because it's two separate teams working on the different games every other year, basically. And I've said this for a couple of years now, and F1 Manager has implemented this in a beautiful way, is the ability to leave your created team. This is pretty self-explanatory. Just leave your team. They run as an AI team. You can explore driving for real teams, have that kind of sense of difference of, the makeup of the garages, the car itself, or whatever. Maybe even team personnel could change a little bit and give you that different flavor and vibe. And then if you want to, you can move back to your created team. And how cool would it be to actually be able to wheel-to-wheel race your team, like the one you made up? They're gonna be left with the same livery that you left them with, maybe, and maybe they have the ability to change it themselves. But it'd be cool to have that moment where you're in a real team and you're there on track, wheel to wheel with them, and knowing that they're also developing their own stuff. And to me, it doesn't seem like a very difficult thing to do necessarily, because we've been told by the devs that when you do my team in previous years, the AI teams that you're facing, they are doing their own sort of upgrading and they are doing that simulation stuff in the background. So if that's the case, why couldn't it be applied to your own team if you left them and went to a different one? The same sort of system actually happens in driver private career mode, obviously, when you go from team to team, the team you've left carries on as they are. Number 3 is going to be dynamic team interactions. This kind of maybe calls a little bit back to point number 1 of maybe having more in-depth AI where they're actually a lot more clever than they have been in the past. Well, this is more about in-depth relationships with teammates and team members. I've always spoken about, I think there needs to be more interaction with your teammate. You know, how often have we talked about, you know, they're on a silly strategy, or they don't know that you're going to come in and you don't want to double stack. You know, there should be systems there where you can actually have convos, almost like an RPG game, where it can be back and forth a little bit in combo with your teammate in some sort of vista of like the back of the garage or whatever, and you maybe talk about strategies and you agree with your teammate, okay, you're going to do this strategy, or they might even convince you, because they're an AI teammate, they might convince you that they know more than you and they suggest a strategy that you should use, and maybe you go with it once in a while, and then vice versa. Also on the fly, some sort of way to, you know, obviously in real life you can't actually talk to your teammate on the radio, but some sort of way to communicate to the team on the pit wall that I'm pitting now, I really don't think my teammate should pit, or I want my teammate to pit now because I'd rather go longer, and having that actual interaction there, and just the team actually feeling like a bit of a clever machine, rather than this thing we have right now of knowing, oh yeah, you know, even though I know the one stop's better, they're going to do a 2-stop because the entire grid's doing a 2-stop, and of course that's going to happen like that. I also think having these kind of RPG style conversations before races and after races could feed into things like affecting morale and performance. Like if you bag on your teammate maybe in these conversations, it could, you know, stir them to be a bit more aggressive, or they could end up not really liking you that much, and maybe they go on a different R&D path than you, basically. You know, they would rather do this, you want to do this. Again, having that more kind of, you know, realism there of maybe difference of opinion as you would do human to human. And in general, basically actually creates a bit of a dynamic in the team where you feel like things are changing every race, every season, and it's not just, you know, as it kind of is now, oh, I'm in charge of most things that I can control, and you guys will do whatever the hell you're hard-coded to do every single time. Number 4, expanded customization options. We've talked about this many times over the years when it comes to Formula 1 games. I still, you know, playing devil's advocate, I still really don't feel like, especially now that EA is in charge of the F1 franchise, I don't see them moving away from a podium pass system, because it's the only way they can monetize anything when it comes to the game, really, multiplayer and single player, really. But I mean, look at other big racing games like Gran Turismo, especially, you know, grounded more in realism Gran Turismo is, and yet Gran Turismo has an amazing livery editor and the ability to actually, you know, import, like, you know, shapes and logos and whatever like that. And you have Forza on the other side, which is a bit more casual, like Horizon, for example, and that still has a great livery editor. I know maybe licensing problems are in there with Formula 1, but it'd be great for them to even maybe try it a little bit in some sort of way, or like I said, just get better at making better podium pass liveries, which, to be fair, recently, in a recent 2 weeks, the last 2 that just came out actually were a lot better. But I think just obviously all of us would prefer a fully customizable option, and that's not even been the case just with my team. I think beforehand we've wanted different liveries season to season, that customizability. You know, now we have teams doing one-off liveries, maybe having options to change out one-off liveries when you go season to season with various real teams. Number 5 are going to be much better driver transfers or customization abilities like EAFC. You know, the sibling sports title that EA have always taken care of, but now obviously together under one umbrella of EA itself now, so they can take some inspiration from EAFC. But first of all, yeah, implement much better driver transfers. Obviously, it's been very apparent in F1 24 how incredibly dull the driver transfers are. But to be fair, this has been a problem now for a couple of years. I just didn't see it because up until F1 24, there were modding abilities that could allow us to customize the transfers for the series that I do and other creators do. But now that tool isn't available, and it's opened my eyes that unfortunately, actually, I haven't probably been banging on about this for longer, that the transfers are actually awful. If you actually go back to the base games of F1 22, 23, 21, 2020, 2019, when they first came in, they're just not that great. And we made a fuss about this in F1 2019 when driver transfers first came in subtly. Obviously, we praised them at the time for having transfers in the first place. That's great. And then we did have a bit of discourse about there not being good enough. And they made a change. They made a patch in F1 2019. I remember this. It was like within the first 3 months, they made a patch to make the volatility of transfers better. And then it seems like that just went away for the future years, and taking on feedback of people saying, oh, it's just not really as good as it used to be. And definitely F1 24 is probably the worst it's ever been. Like literally only one interesting transfer every 2 seasons happening. So it needs to be a lot more volatile, even if it means like having a setting maybe to be like realistic, and then you can switch it to, I want all out chaos, like surprising transfers, like Verstappen going to a rival or whatever like that. And, you know, like, you know, a real life case of Hamilton to Ferrari, like jaw dropping sort of transfers, but even a lot more transfers between the midfield teams, you know, lower teams from Formula 2 maybe as well being played into that. And if that isn't possible for whatever reason, like, you know, the gremlins and the hard coding of the ego engine won't allow it, then like I said, take inspiration from EAFC, where in the football game in FIFA for many years now, you've had the ability to look at the roster of different teams and change them. So why can't we look at the roster, the database of the F1 grid, and season to season once allow us to change the database in career mode only, if that's a licensing problem, to have it in the full, you know, just Grand Prix mode from the main menu, just in career mode contained itself, you know, in the same way you can only get the extra tracks in career mode after season 1, maybe only after season 1, a kind of a database menu option opens up to allow you to change it. And, you know, the description of it in the game menu could be, to ensure that you have fun with career mode for seasons to come, you can change through and, you know, change it how you like, basically, if the volatility coding isn't something they can simply, you know, do on a switch. Number 6 is going to be a fully revamped R&D, and I'm not just talking about changing the UI up, even though I do think they should change the UI for sure. Should bring back the R&D tree. I think a lot of people actually enjoyed it, and I think having both the tree and then the ability to zoom into the tree to see those details would be great. But I think they need to now, especially with maybe the rumors of F1 Manager not being a thing in the future, you know, maybe cherry pick from the Formula 1 game cousins over there. F1 Manager's R&D system is so in depth and it's really great. I think it's a lot better. Do away with the basic major ultimate upgrades, and I think use what F1 Manager have of actual numbers and percentage improvements of upgrades. Because you know what that gives you? It doesn't give you a ceiling of upgrades where, oh, I know that we'll get to the end of this tree or get to the end of this line of upgrades. I've done the last ultimate upgrade, and that's it. Unfortunately, we can't do anything. And if the game doesn't want to give you an R&D reset, because sometimes it doesn't, you're stuck with maxed out cars for most of the grid for 2 seasons, which could be quite boring if you're also not having exciting transfers, or, you know, one team is still dominating because the maxed out cars don't equal each other by the end of it. So having a percentage of improvement like F1 Manager basically gives you a infinite ceiling of the cars can keep getting quicker and quicker or slower and slower, and just coupled with actual better R&D resets would be actually just so much more beneficial season to season of having a much more dynamic R&D system. And also, I don't think, you know, Cody's EA shouldn't be afraid of getting nerdy like the F1 Manager game with percentages and like data numbers. I think the majority of F1 fans in general are smart enough to read into the data and understand it and know what they're doing, especially if they're going to play multiple seasons of career mode. Of course they're going to understand the nerdy side of it, and they're going to be able to understand the percentage numbers going on. Number 7 is going to be expanded media and press interactions. You know, the game is dabbled with this here and there, but not, you know, really that great ever, you know, to the point where you're going to constantly want to, you know, actually see it in future seasons. I'm talking about developing more immersive media systems where players must handle press conferences and media questions, but they actually matter and they influence the career progression you could have, or the progression you could have on your My Team creator team. And again, this kind of goes back to point number 3 and point number 1, is if there's the ability to tap into more sophisticated AI models where they can actually hold their own and interact with you, and, you know, like in role-playing games, open world games where there's conversations going on and they feed in and the game remembers it all. I think having that sort of system in the press stuff as well to really make, you know, things you say and whatever and decisions matter, because we've had press questions before and they kind of maybe alter things, but not that much. I actually want to see proper impacts, you know, almost to the point where you could kind of almost quote unquote in the game get cancelled by the media or whatever. You know, you said something really bad, and it could lead to maybe, you know, your team that you're driving for, you know, a real F1 team, they might actually not want to renew the contract because you've badmouthed them too much in the press or whatever, or the board of your own created My Team could want to fire you because you're not running the team well, and it's showing in the press and whatever, and then that could feed into point number 2 about leaving your own created team. I think there's still so much untapped potential about making it such an immersive world in the career mode. Number 8 is going to be in-depth training and development, introducing training programs and development options for your teammates and for other aspects of the team, like pit crew, aero, maybe even the engineers themselves or whatever, or just your mechanics basically in the team. Kind of like an F1 manager again, the ability to see your staff improving stats. And that's another thing, having stats for these staff members so you can actually see that improvement. And so again, you could then go headhunting for head of aeros, for, you know, head of chassis from rival teams, or a pool of a database of these heads to improve and boost your R&D. That would again then feed into point number 6 of having the revamped R&D would then really allow you to have a revamped, you know, training system for your staff. You could actually have the ability to hire staff members and have that management aspect coupled with then you then go and drive the car. I also think just having training stuff for your teammates, having that more in-depth would be great. I think the system we already had in My Team was good. I think there just could be more to it, basically expand upon it rather than, you know, leaving it stagnant for a couple of years. But of course they may be doing that anyway with the revamped My Team in F1 25. We'll see. Now number 9 and number 10 here, these are more kind of like pipe dreams basically, so that's why I've left them to here. So number 9, improved progression system. I think a lot of people have said it before, and it's a pipe dream because I don't know if they're ever going to really do it, to be honest, because it's a lot of work maybe for them and they don't see like it's that important. But having maybe Formula 3 in the game eventually, and then really being able to do some sort of proper progression system of Formula 3 to Formula 2 to Formula 1 would be great. I think that would be so goated to have a career mode where you could do that progression, and then within that career, you know, pay your dues, drive for real teams when you get to F1, and then down the line, there's like a pop-up and you can create your own team because you've been in the sport for 4 seasons or 5 seasons or whatever. That would be just taking it to like a new level, but that's such a pipe dream in my opinion. I think then probably never gonna get to anything like that. I don't know, maybe I'm proven wrong, but I just don't see it even in like the next 5 years. But it's a beautiful pipe dream. That would be amazing. And then finally, number 10, this would be a big undertaking. I just don't see them doing it, but it's something that based off what I've experienced over the last 10 years plus, really, you know, in terms of the games before F1 2015 that I can't even track. The only reason at the start of the video I only counted the last 10 years of F1 games is because before F1 2015, I mostly played on console, so there's no way for me to track how many hours I spent in those games. But over the course of last 12, 13 years of playing F1 games, a major thing always, season to season, has been having car changes, like chassis changes, aero changes. Like maybe, you know, my idea would be here is if the devs of the F1 game could sign off with all the F1 teams, like a generic couple of front wing, rear wing, side pod shapes, you know, basically like, you know, maybe 3 different options of side pods, front wing, side, you know, shapes and rear wings and whatnot, engine covers maybe, you know, generic ones. And if they can sign them off with all official teams that, okay, we're cool for you to swap these out with our car as long as that you stick to our sponsor locations and whatever, then having the ability to see AI teams and your My Team car over season to season change, like the actual cars look different to go in tandem with the fact it's a new season. Because it's always the one big gripe is if you don't have mods, if you're especially just playing on console, season to season the game could look literally the same, even though maybe underneath the R&D, the transfers make this season so different. if you're just looking at it, it just looks so samey. So having actual car chassis shape changes would be insane, and it's something that I think a lot of us and I've been thinking about, 10 plus years, all the time. But we've always known that's probably one of the biggest undertakings, is trying to get through the red tape of all of that, and then also making the actual shapes and whatever, and having an interchangeable system. But that would be incredible at some point. But again, like the last point, could just be a pipe dream, but it's one that's there for sure. So yeah, I think that for me are the kind of big 10 headline things. There are maybe other things I could have included, like build your own engine, but those are quite specific to recent years with my team, whereas I feel like most of these 10 points were very much in general based off all the years of experience I've had with F1 games, even before my team was even a thing, basically. But let me know what you guys made of that. Do you have any big other headline ones? If you've been playing the game as long as me, do you have headline things that you think could have been added into this? And to be fair, you know, there's enough extra ideas in the comments. We may need to make another video in the future just to kind of get them out there into the public forum, so maybe someone from EA, from Cody's, could see it one day. Who knows? But guys, if you have enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Born On content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.